Hello and welcome to week 2 of CNET56. I want to just share my screen and show you a couple things that we're going to be doing this week. So here's our course. So as usual, if you go to the modules and if you look at week 2, it gives us a lay of the land here. So again, we have our discussion, which is going to look at the OSI model and the TCP/IP model. And you have to respond by Wednesday to the prompt, which is explain the network devices that are found on your home network and describe your work or home network in terms of the model, whether it's peer-to-peer client server and its size, whether it's a PAN, LAN, WAN, or a MAN, okay? So you'll want to make sure you respond to that prompt by Wednesday at 11:59 and then discuss it through Sunday where you need to respond it to your peers. All right. Also, quiz 1 is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So that's March 5th. And then I wanted to mention this week's lab. So let me show you the lab, and I'll hand this out in our lab time. But basically last week we built our virtual environment. So this week we're going to kind of configure our gas clients. So we have Windows 10, we have Linux, CentOS, Linux 9, and TinyCore. So I have a list here. So notice this is just a list of things to do. And a lot of times students will start on number 1 and go, well, how do I do that? Well, this is just a list. And then here's the instructions on how to do it. So let me open up my VirtualBox. So here's VirtualBox. And you should have on your computer that you use in room 404, you should have virtuals under there for your Windows, for the Tuesday section. It should say CNET56-Tuesday, and then the Thursday section. And you should have 3 virtual machines. You might have 6 if you cloned them like I asked you to. If you don't have clones of your virtual machines, you need to do here's how you make a clone. So you just right click on the VM you want to clone. So I'm gonna close Tuesday. Let's assume this is the Thursday class. But it's the same for Tuesday and Thursday. So to clone this, you just right click, clone, and then you want to make sure, now, if you didn't do this, it's okay, but make sure you generate a new MAC address and then click next and a full clone, and it will go through and it'll build a clone. So you can see over here that it is copying the machine. And this will take a couple of seconds, maybe 30, 40 seconds. And what it's doing is copying the hard drive file and the configuration file for our virtual machine and making a new one so we have it. So now you can see here we have a clone. So do that for all of your machines. We'll do that one. So there goes CentOS, which goes a little bit faster. Out of the size of everything, the Windows machine's the biggest, then CentOS is the second biggest, and then the TinyCore is, of course, the smallest. All right, so, and then clone TinyCore while we're at it. All right, so if you did not do the cloning last week, make sure you do that this week before you start doing any of this work. Because what that will allow us is if something goes sideways on our install or what we're doing, we can always redo it from the clone. All right, so let's start with our Windows machine. So I'm going to use not the clone, but I'll use my original one here. and I'm going to start that up. All right, so let's look at our lab here. So first thing we want to do is make sure you're using a dynamically assigned IP address. And I'll tell you right now, automatically, that's the default. You will have a dynamically assigned IP address. All right. So here's the VM. I'm going to let that start. And the next thing we're going to do is make sure our host name is your last name -lab. So mine would be Miller-lab. Then we're going to install the Internet Information Services feature and the file transfer protocol service. And then we're going to turn off the firewall, download, install all updates from Microsoft Update, and then install the VirtualBox guest additions. Okay, so let's come into this machine, and it's going to start up here. I'm going to make it full screen so I can see everything. So remember, your password should be CNET2023 ! All right, so while that loads up, let's go look at how do we change the host name. So remember, this is just the bullet list, the punch list. Then this is how we do it. So we're going to go into Start Settings System About. So if I click Start Settings, and System, and then About, and then rename this PC, and I'm going to rename it should be Miller-lab. All right, so if I come in here, you do lowercase, and that's all you got to do. Rename the PC, and then restart now. All right, so that's going to restart. And the next thing I want to do is add the IIS service, and that's in the control panel. So let's let this restart. So hopefully your lab computers won't take quite as long as this. My computer's a couple years older than the ones in the lab. So, all right. So again, we log in. All right, so let's check our punch list. So we did this one. I'll just highlight it just so we know it's done. But let's take care of this first one too. So let's ensure that we're using an IP address, a dynamic IP address. So the way we can do that is we can right click on the network icon here, open network and sharing. And then if we go into our Ethernet adapter and look at the properties, and then look at TCP IP version 4, so Internet Protocol version 4, it says obtain automatically. So that means it's dynamic. If it was used the following, that would be known as a static address. So we're going to leave it on obtain automatically. And also, if we look at the details, you probably recognize this number because you saw that last week, the 10.0.2.15, 255.255.2550. Okay. And then here's my physical address. So that's all stuff you looked at last week. All right. So now what I want to do is go into the control panel. So open the control panel, click on programs, turn on Windows features, select Internet Information Services and FTP. So if I come in here, if I just click on start and type control. That will get me to the control panel. And then I want to go to programs. And then I want to turn Windows features on or off. And if I scroll down here to Internet Information Services, I want to select that one, and I want to turn on FTP. So that's all I have to do is click those two, and then click OK. And this will take a couple of minutes. All right, and while that's running, I'm going to just click on Start and type CMD, and I want to verify the host name changed. So if I just type host name and press enter, you can see that mine was changed properly. So that's good. That's what we want to see. All right. So that's FTP and IIS should be installed. Turn off the firewall. Again, we're going to go into the control panel. And I'll go to the home. And then we want to go into network and internet. And then over here, hold on. And it's not network and internet, it's security, system and security, and then Windows Firewall. And all I want to do is turn Windows Firewall on or off. And for the private network, turn it off, and the public network, turn it off. Okay, and then it should be red here. And what that will do, that will allow our machine to be accessible across the network. Okay, and it tells you, hey, the firewall's off. We're like, yeah, thank you, I know that. I just did that. Okay, and then the next one is download, install updates. I'm going to wait a little bit to do that, and we'll come back to that. And then the next one is install the VirtualBox guest editions. Now, you may have done this last week, right? And the way you do it is you come up here to devices, insert guest edition CD image, and then your machine will say, hey, something just popped in my CD. What do you want to do? We click on it, and then we're going to run it. And then we'll say yes. And this is just next, install. And reboot now, finish. All right, so let's go back to the lab. And now we have VirtualBox installed. So we now are going to log back on, and we'll see if the settings work where we can go full screen. Because it's kind of nice to be able to see everything we're trying to do. All right, so while that's starting up, I'm going to go ahead and launch my CentOS. Okay, so we'll start CentOS here. So there's my Windows. I'm going to log on. And you might be going, well, it doesn't look like it did anything. Well, it won't until we tell it to go into full screen mode. So if I click on this, or if I hit the right control and the F key, which I'm going to do here, it's going to say, hey, do you want to switch to full screen mode? I'm going to hit switch. And now it's a full screen. Okay. So while we're working on CentOS, I'm going to come over here and type updates, actually, and check for updates. And I'm going to let that run. Okay. So while that's doing that, I'm going to hit Control F again to get out of full screen. And I'm going to minimize that. All right, so now I'm on CentOS. So now I'm going to log into CentOS, which is CNET 2023 exclamation point with a capital C on CNET. And I'm going to log into this one. And now I'm going to make sure it's dynamically assigned, set your host name, install Apache and turn on the HTTP service, disable SE Linux, download and install all updates, and then install the VirtualBox guest editions. So to do this, I'm going to come back into CentOS. There I am in CentOS. And first thing I'm going to do is check the network. So if I click on the little network icon here, wired settings, and if I click on the little gear next to wired, it says my IP version 4 is automatic DHCP. So that's perfect. If I look at the details, you probably recognize these numbers, 10.0.2.15, the hardware address, and then it doesn't show the subnet mask here, but it is 255.255.255.0. All right. So that's good. Now the next thing I want to do is change the host name. So I have directions here. So what I need to do is become the root user by typing su space -l and then type host name. So let's come in here and I'm going to get a terminal. So if I click on activities, terminal, and you notice here, I'm logged on as CNET56. So I'm going to become the root or the administrator. So you can do that by typing su space -l, all lowercase. And then it's going to ask me for the password. And you type it in, but it doesn't show it on the screen. So if you type and you don't see anything, that's by default. That's how it should be. Okay. Then I hit enter. And now notice that I am now root, right? So just think of Guardians of the Galaxy. I am root, not Groot. All right. So now if I type host name, gives me the host name of localhost.local domain. We want to change our host name to CentOS-Miller.lab. Okay. If it's not CentOS, do the following. So now I'm going to do NMTUI. So NMTUI, and then set system host name, CentOS-Miller. I think that's what it said. CentOS.Miller-lab. So let me put the lab in there. And then if you hit the tab, you can get to the OK. Set the host name, and then I want to quit. And let's go back to our list here. So now if I need to restart the system, the host name D. So here's how you can do that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put that just above that so I can see it. And you're going to type system C. And if you hit the tab, it will complete it. Restart. Dash name D service and press enter. Okay, that didn't do anything, but it will show that. Now notice right here, it says, this is my host name. So I'm root at localhost. So now let's reboot. So you type reboot and then your CentOS will reboot. And this will load up. All right. And that takes just a second. Give it some time. Be patient. And then CentOS will load up. And whenever you make a video, everything always takes longer. And now we're going to log on. And then let's open a terminal. And right away, I can see that this changed from localhost to CentOS-Miller. So now if I type host name, I'm CNET or CentOS-Miller.lab. Okay, so we're good to go there. So now let's come back to the lab. Now we want to install Apache. And Apache is the web server for Linux. IIS is the web server for Windows. So that's what we're testing. So I'm going to become the root again. So SU space -L. Remember, the password doesn't show. And that's for security reasons. But once you change to root, that means you're good. Okay. So now let me start this, and we want to see if we have that on there, the Apache. So I'm going to type system ctl start httpd. That's the name of the service. And if I get an error, that means it's not on there. So I need to go install that. So I can use a program called Yum, and I'm going to put Yum install httpd-y. The y just means if there's any prompts, the answer is yes. So this is going to go out there and get some updates and install Apache. All right. So just be patient while this does its thing. It'll take just a couple minutes. Okay, and then it goes through, runs the triangle. If you didn't put the -y on there, it would ask you, do you want to continue? And you just put yes. Okay. So now I'm going to do systemctl start httpd again, and it will give me, it started it. It didn't give me that error that it did before. So then the next thing I want to do is enable that. HTTPD service. So that's just going to make sure that that service is enabled all the time, and there it created the link. All right, so I'm already root, so I'm going to just go right into the next one. So we're going to disable the firewall. We're going to make sure that firewall is not in our way. So what I'm going to type here is system ctl stop firewall D, and then system ctl disable firewall D. All right, and that removed it. It's going to turn off the firewall. So the next thing I want to do is turn off the SE Linux, which is the secure environment variables. So I'm already root, so I don't have to become root, but I'm going to type nano etc SE Linux config, and then I'm going to come down here, and where this says SE Linux enforcing, I'm going to change that to disabled. And then to exit out of here, you hit Control X, enter, yes, and then enter. All right, and then I need to reboot one more time. And that should get me where SE Linux. So let's see where we're at here on our list. We are DHCP. We changed our host name. We installed Apache and turned it on. We just disabled the SE Linux service. And now let's do these last two. All right, so let's take a look at that. Once it starts, open a terminal and we'll get the status of our HTTP. We want to make sure that's running still. I'm logging on. All right, so now if I come over here, we'll go back to the terminal, become root, su-l, in the 2023, and let's do and we're going to see if it's running, and it says system CTL status, and it shows me it's running. So that's perfect. All right, so to get all that, you hit Q. All right, so the next thing I want to do is install the VirtualBox edition. So I became root, and now I want to do a DNF update. Okay, and that will go through and see if there's anything to update, and it says there isn't anything. So then I want to type DNF install HTTPS DL .rpm. So you type all that in there, make sure you don't have any typos, and it will go out there and grab some stuff, hit yes. Okay, then the next one I want to do is DNF install GCC kernel dash devel dash headers make bzip to Perl and DKMS. Okay, and press enter. Now we'll go out and grab those packages. And then we hit yes. All right. So it's going out there and grabbing everything we need and any dependencies that might be related. So like if we want GCC, which is the compiler, it will grab some of the other code needed for GCC, like the C++ or whatever, and away we go. All right, so once that is done, you see we're 20, 5, 40, 51. And then we'll go through and grab all this stuff that we need. A lot of stuff for Perl, which is a programming language. And is this okay? Yes, to update the key. And now it's installing everything. So the first one grabbed it, this one installs it. You see it goes pretty quick. There's 201 packages. It's already on 170, 180, and so forth, okay? So just watch this. You know, it's pretty exciting. right, so that's going. I'm going to go check on my Windows machine. So Windows got an update for me. Good. So let's restart now. So let Windows restart. And then we'll come back over here. All right, and this is going to take a little bit of time. So let's go look at our lab real quick. So once that's done, what we're going to do is click on devices on the Oracle VM VirtualBox menu bar. You have to do that once this is done. You don't do it beforehand, otherwise it'll mess up some stuff. So wait for this to finish before we'll do that next part. Okay, so that just finished. Now it's going to verify everything's done. So now let's type exit, exit. All right, so now what we do is we go up to devices. We click on insert guest editions CD image. And this is going to prompt you to run it. And we're going to hit run. It's going to ask you for a password, which is CNET56. And then it's going to go do its thing. Now you may see an error on here, but for what I can tell, that error is just a warning and everything will work just fine. Okay. So once that is done, it's going to add some kernel modules. All right. So let's make this full screen again. So if you make it full screen, notice it just stays right there. So it says, hey, check the log to see what went wrong. And this will finish up in just another minute or so. All right, I'm going to go back to Windows and log on. Oh, that's still doing updates, so that's good. All right, still working here. All right, so let's just leave this for a second and let's click on the power button here. And then we want to log off. And we just want to log out. And then log back in as CNET56. Okay. And then let's hit Control F. Says you want to switch. And that didn't do what we wanted to do. Okay, let's see here. Oh. Control F. All right, so let me go to my devices again. Insert this guest edition. I'm going to run that one more time. remove that disk, and then insert it again. That's saying the system appears to have a version of it, but let's tell it to continue. So I'm going to let that run its course here, and I'm going to go back over to Windows. All right, so here's my Windows. All right. So I make this full screen, Control F. There's my Windows. Now you can come down here and get into all the settings as well. All right, so let's make sure all our updates are still going. Updates. Check for updates. All right, we'll get those going. And come back into CentOS. We'll let that run in the background. Now let's look at the lab. All right. So now we have, I think we've gotten everything done here. So except for the updates. Let's go into CentOS and look at updates. So I'm going to just get that out of the way. Now let's go in here. And the way you can get to the updates in CentOS. So okay, that's going to keep going, but let me do the updates. So CentOS, there won't be any updates, I don't think. So if you click on activities and then software and browse software updates, it says we're up to date. So as far as installing updates, there aren't any. So let's go back to our lab. So now these two are done. The guest additions are installing. Then a lesson here is enable shared clipboard. So if I come into my virtual machine, so I'll do it first here. If I click on devices, shared clipboard, bidirectional, devices, drag and drop, bidirectional. Then do the same thing for your Windows machine. So Windows, click on devices, shared clipboard, bidirectional, and drag and drop, bidirectional. And what that allows us to do is later on, we'll be able to drag and drop. Now notice I don't have to hit my control key anymore. So that tells me that well, actually, it looks like I do have to hit the control key. Okay, let's let that continue here. But that means they're set up. Okay, so now I did that. And then this next sentence says, quick look at layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 of the OSI model, which is what you're should be learning about this week in the lecture material. So it says, how is it attached to the network? So this is a VirtualBox setting. So if I go into, say, my Windows machine, and down here in the bottom where I have the little network icon here, if I click on that, right click and then network settings, that question is saying, how is it attached it's attached via NAT. Okay. And what is the MAC address and the IP version for it? Well, the MAC address you can look up. The IP version for it is 10.0.2.15. CentOS is going to be set up very similarly. So right click, network, how's it attached? NAT. You can get the MAC addresses right here as well. And then the IP addresses, we know what that is, 10.0.2.15. All right. So it's saying, are the IP addresses the same for both Windows 10 and CentOS? The answer is yes. And how is that possible? Well, if you go to this site, it will explain what NAT is. So then just give me a brief statement of how both of those machines can have the same IP address because they're using NAT. So look up this website and it'll tell you how to answer that. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my machines here. And instead of NAT, I'm going to change this to bridged. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for CentOS. Change it from NAT to bridged. Okay, so then that says press return. And now Control F. So if you let that run long enough, then you'll get your full screen. All right, so there we are, full screen. All right, so we just changed our network adapter from NAT to bridged in VirtualBox. So now for CentOS, you have to do something. You can restart or just come into this network and turn it off and turn it back on. And then click the little gear and you'll notice you get a new IP address. Okay. So mine's 136 for CentOS. And then if I go into Windows, it knows I'm on a new network. So I'm going to take care of that real quick. And I'm going to get my IP address. Come in here. So now I'm 135. Now at the school, you'll have a different network. I'm at home right now. So, so then all you have to do now, and you can leave those minimized, is so write down the IP address here. And then from Windows 10, from this machine here, I'm going to open a tab and go to 192.135 was Windows. Yep, 135. So if I look, then it says, what is the name of the website? And that's in the tab. So the name is this right here, IIS Windows. Now I'm going to open another tab and go to 136. And then that's the name of the tab for our Apache. So this is the test page for our Linux website. And this is the test page for our Windows website. Okay. And then when you're done, make sure you do all the updates. Make sure you get some of those updates. Because if we don't stay on top of these updates, at some point they're going to catch up to us and really kind of bog us down. All right. So that's a quick run through of this week's lab. If you have any questions, talk to me in lab and we'll get you going in the right direction. All right, if you had any issues installing any of the OSs last week, let me know and I can help you get that squared away as well. All right, and that's it for today, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.